I grew up Christian.
Okay.
And went to, saw people, Christians die, that my parents knew because they're old.
Sure.
And have old friends.
Uh-huh.
And would go to funerals and everyone would be crying. And I'm like, aren't they in a better place than this?
Right.
Because I'm not having a great time. And now they are. So
right.
Why is everyone crying?
Right.
Aren't you going to see them in like 5 minutes because you guys are all old too? Like, I don't get it.
Okay.
And it's going to be amazing. And it's just like, well, they went first. So,
right.
Yeah. So, anyway. Yeah. Why are Christians so afraid of death? And why is it such a sad thing?
Okay.
Like, I get like, hey, we won't be able to see each other for a while.
Right.
But like, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
and
right.
then, because like comparatively, it's like, well, for these old people, it was like year and a half compared to the rest of forever.
Right.
Like that's nothing.
Sure.
So why are we crying?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't get it.
All right. So let's. I'm going to deal with the fear part first, to be afraid, and then we'll deal with the grief, sadness part. I think being afraid of death is pretty normal for most people.
Okay.
And I know for me, that was actually, like the fear of just nothingness, the fear of everything just being black. It was kind of like the way I had it framed in my head.
Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be bright,
right? But in my head, but I'm thinking like, okay, like what if it's not true? Okay,
what if it is true?
What if it is? But I do think for a lot of Christians, they're also battling with the fact of, I want it to be true, I hope it's true, but there may be this inkling in their mind of, but what if it's not true?
Wow, when I was a kid, they were telling me it was true every day.
I know. And I think that if people are honest about it, though, that they do have, I'm not saying everybody does, but there are people that have a sense of, oh man, but what if this thing's just not like, what if this is actually it? What if it all ends?
What if I suck?
At this point? And so I think even for Christians, we battle that. And I know I did up to a certain point in my life. And then, when I got, and I've talked about before about having pancreatitis, and there was a moment where they thought that I had pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
And actually 2 separate moments. But the one that scared me the most was the initial moment. Doctor comes in the room and he's like, we think there's a tumor in your pancreas and we think you have pancreatic cancer. He said, we'll know more in about 5 hours when all the other test results come back.
Anyway, see ya.
Yes, that's what he did.
Got other people to deal with.
And he just walked straight out of the room. And I was like, what? And, I was in my, mid-30s?
Feeling sad. Might have cancer.
Right. So I was in my mid-30s, and I've got 3 little kids and a wife, I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm scared of dying. I'm scared of leaving my kids behind. And so I remember calling my pastor at the time, and I just told him, they just told me I might have pancreatic cancer. Can you please come up here to the hospital? And so he and his wife immediately came up to the hospital to see me and pray with me and visit with me. And that was huge. But I mean, I was scared. And so I think.
Were you scared of having to deal with cancer, or were you scared of dying?
I was scared of dying and leaving my kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you scared of dying or leaving your kids?
Okay. No, I was more scared of leaving my kids.
Okay.
Yeah, behind. And so it wasn't like I was, and I didn't want, but I mean, obviously I didn't want to die at, how old was I? 37 or whatever I think I was,
Mm-hmm. I didn't know this was going to get personal.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
but
all the questions are in relation to you now.
Yeah. But here's my point. so like I had that moment of being scared. That was end of August in 16, and then November of 2016, they once again thought I had pancreatic cancer. Had to wait a whole another week, and I remember when the doctor called me and said, "You don't have cancer." Like, I just broke down crying, just thinking God didn't have cancer. But then the pancreatitis kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and to where I just was, shriveling up to nothing and just couldn't do much and in pain all the time. And I remember the moment where I was sitting at a Christmas Eve service, and in 2019 at a Christmas Eve service, and I was so sick. I just got out of the hospital. I was at the church just because the kids had a part they were singing a song or something at church. And so I forced myself to go, felt horrible. And I remember and then toward the end of the service, one of our worship leaders was singing "Oh Holy Night." And I can remember right then and there going, God, I'm ready. I'm ready to die. Like, I don't want to keep, I'm just going to trust you with my family, my kids. And I don't want to keep, I'm tired. I mean, so like, I was just like, I'm tired of being in pain all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of going days, weeks, sometimes months without eating. I'm tired of it. And just really being at peace, actually, not like I'm just tired of it to get me out of this thing, but actually like at peace of like, it's going to be awesome to see you, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, that was like the first time I really got settled in the fact of, oh, I am going to see Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And all fear related to death just vanquished from me. But I mean, I've been a believer and a pastor for, years before I got to that point, and I mean, here I am at, 40 years old and finally getting to that point of going, I'm good, Jesus. Like, I'm ready to see you. And like knowing that was the final thing. And so I think that my point just being is, I think that having these fears are normal. And I think sometimes it takes things like this to kind of bring it to perspective for us of, no, we're really going to see Jesus and it's okay. And I think we also can have, so anyway, so I think that some Christians have no fears and some Christians have a lot of fears related to death, and what that means or what it entails, whether it's dying itself or like what you mentioned, like, well, let's delineate it. Is it just the dying part, or is it you're going to hate, you don't want to leave, and you don't want to leave your kids, you don't want to leave loved ones, whatever it is. So I think it's okay to wrestle and to struggle with that. And Paul, when he's writing even to the Thessalonians there in 2 Thessalonians, when he's telling them, you're not grieving as those who have no hope, like he's saying, listen, like, no, like you're going to see them again. Like we, like in death, if
they do
hope.
the right thing.
Right. Well, that's true. But in death, there is hope, and I think, so for me, that's the kind of the fear part. I know that kind of shifting to the grief part. I think, man, grief is, I mean, like, that's what Paul's saying. We still grieve. It's just that we grieve with hope. So I think grief is really normal in relation to dying and death. And because we're going to, like, and I know it's the perspective of, all right, but they're in a better place. Shouldn't we be happy for them, right? If they're older, that's the case. Or if they've been battling an illness or a sickness and they're no longer battling that, and we feel like they're at rest and at peace.
It's always the case.
That can be more of the case. Well, all I'm saying is that it's easier for us to grieve with a sense of hope when it seems more timely or beneficial to that person.
When someone was having a worse time of it than other people.
Right. But, like if you're like when I did the funeral of a, you know, young 20s mom who I'd been her youth pastor, that was, you know, like, yeah, there's still hope because we're going to see her again.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's devastating, you know, for a young husband, for a young child who really will never know her mom, you know, and not get to grow up with her mom. Like, that's, you know, for her own mother who
that's why I'm asking, what are we crying about?
Is now burying her daughter. What we're crying about is like, we feel like we're going to miss them. I mean, that's what that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we're going to miss them. And I think that's the real part of where we are grieving. And that it's completely okay. Like, you know, I've got a close family member and they have terminal cancer, and I'm trying to wrap my head around that. And like, the reality is, like, there's days I cry now thinking about it, and they haven't even passed away yet, but I just know that we're moving toward that.
Is that rude?
No, it's natural human emotion, you know? You know, so I just think that, you know, we're going to miss people. And I do think so much of it does hinge on, you know, for a lot of people, I do think it hinges on, well, did it seem timely? Were they taking them from us too soon? Mm-hmm. Was something going on and they were sick, and now they're not, and so we can at least be thankful they're not struggling and suffering anymore in pain or dealing with an illness. You know, and so I think all those things factor in to the grieving process and why people are crying. You know, and I remember when I was officiating the funeral for my grandparents. They died 6 weeks apart from each other. And my granddad passed away first, and actually it was kind of sudden. Like, we actually thought my grandmother was going to go first because she had just had pneumonia, and they were mid-80s and she couldn't get over it. And he actually passed away first. And I remember when I was doing his funeral, you know, when he passed away, he literally just took a nap, closed his eyes. That was it, right? Just went to go be with the Lord. That was it. Mm-hmm. And so it was shocking in the suddenness of it for us. But at the same time, like, when I remember when I was doing his funeral, officiating the funeral, like, I mean, I was like making jokes and we were laughing, and because we knew Granddad was in a better place. We knew Jesus. Mm-hmm. And he didn't have to suffer.
That's the thing, is like, they make funerals so sad.
Yeah. And I really do think, when I officiate funerals, I say this up front, we're going to laugh. Yeah. And we're going to cry.
Right.
Because we're going to smile and we're going to grieve. Right. Because there should be both. Like, I should be able to remember the great things. Right. And laugh and smile when I think about memories, and also grieve over the fact that, man, I'm going to really miss them, you know? And so, you know, so the end of, you know, so I did Granddad's funeral, and, you know, we kind of laughed and we caught up, and then I said some serious stuff too, obviously. But then I remember at the end of the funeral, when I had, you know, we're at the graveside, I finished officiating the graveside, you know, walked in and shook all of my, you know, aunt, uncles and parents' hands and walked through there. One of my mentors, who actually had led me to Christ, you know, was sitting there on the other side of that tent. And I remember it was actually kind of lightly raining. And I remember stepping out from under the tent after I shook everybody's hands or anything. And he was there, and I just hugged him, and I lost it. And it was kind of like all my emotions came out. Mm-hmm. And then, but 6 weeks later, when I'm doing Granny's funeral, I mean, I opened my mouth and I didn't
cry at all.
No, I opened my mouth and I immediately started crying. Where I'd be able to make it through Granddad's without doing that until the very end. Granny's, it was just like, I opened my mouth and it just all came out for like point one. And she was the one that we were actually expecting to pass away first. And so, all I'm saying is
it compounded.
Yeah. And definitely that's part of it, right? I mean, being so close to each other, and their passing. But I think that for all I'm saying is the grieving part is so natural and it's so okay. And I think later on, in the next, episode, we'll talk about, lengths of grieving and all that kind of stuff. Because I do want to talk about that as well. But I just will say up front that, like,
you get 5 minutes.
Oh, great. And so, but I want to grieve. Yeah, to grieve. And I think that up front, like, I want to say, like, there's normal patterns of grieving, but not everyone fits those normal patterns. And there are proper, healthy lengths of grieving. And we'll talk about that too. But I also want to say, but it's perfectly natural to grieve the one you're going to miss,
Mm-hmm.
And, because it's simple things, right? Like, like I, in my phone, I still have my granddad's number in my phone. And, and
don't call it.
Yeah. And he passed away.
You might pick up.
Right. Well, that would be freaky. But, he passed away over a decade ago,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that thing. It's like, I'll never get to call him again.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never get to hear his voice again. I'll never get to hear his counsel again. It's like, I mean, even now I'm crying thinking about it, or about to cry thinking about it.
You can text him with AI now.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. And so, but I think all of us know that it's okay to grieve, or I hope we know it's okay to grieve with hope in the midst of death. But like you said, we also can laugh. We also can smile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So